today we're going to talk about the biggest fear that people have in life. You know, Seinfeld famously joked that the person in the coffin isn't scared. It's the person who has to speak about the person in the coffin who is. The fear of public speaking is the number one fear that people have. And I don't even mean necessarily talking on a stage like I do for a living. I'm talking about the fear of speaking in public, sharing your ideas at work, expressing what you need to other people, having hard conversations with friends and family, talking at a meeting at school, pushing back on something with a doctor, like just being able to express yourself. And the reason why this is such a huge fear for people is because it is a moment of intense vulnerability. The second that you go to speak at work, what happens? Everybody turns and all eyes are on you. And suddenly you feel like there's a spotlight on you and you get really worried about being judged. Same thing happens when you have to speak in class, right? When you got called on in class, most people get a little nervous. A lot of people hated that moment in elementary school when you had to read out loud. That's a moment of public speaking. And we are so afraid in that moment when the spotlight is on us. And I've shared in a number of episodes that I used to be terrified of public speaking. I would turn bright red when I got called on as a little kid. In law school, I would start coughing attacks or I would leave the room. As a young lawyer, I would wear a scarf because I'd get these neck rashes as I was talking to the judge and to the prosecutor in a small courtroom. And I just figured I would be the kind of person that always had a bright red face, always had an awful case of hives on my chest, always felt my tongue going dry. And I hated it. I hated it, hated it, hated it. And today, what I'm going to talk about is how I went from being afraid of public speaking to becoming, I'm almost like, it sounds braggadocious, but the truth is I went from that to being the most successful female speaker in the world. More than 111 speeches a year on the corporate circuit. So Microsoft, Starbucks, JP Morgan, AT&T, any kind of company you can imagine. I've been there. Now, the first question I always get is, how did you get into the speaking business and how did you become the most sought after female speaker on the corporate speaking circuit, Mel? Well, the truth is I didn't set out to do anything. I've told you guys a story about how that TEDx talk happened by accident in 2011 and how I had a 21-minute long panic attack while I was giving that talk. And I never thought I would speak ever, ever, ever again. And then something crazy happened. A year later, somebody put the TEDx talk online. And for another year, it went crazy viral. And I didn't even know it was online. And so we're talking 2013. Now, by mid-2013, people start to reach out to me on Facebook and say, hey, I saw that thing in San Francisco. And I'm like, were you there? They're like, no, it's online. I'm like, it's online? And I realized, holy cow, this thing's online. It's got like 1 million views. That's crazy. And people kept reaching out. And it was mainly women's conferences. And they were asking if I wanted to come and do like a breakout session. And they wanted me to just repeat that TEDx talk. And so I had no idea that this was an industry or a business. I looked at speaking as something that famous people do, something that sports people do, something that people that are major authors must do. So I didn't have a book. I didn't have anything. I just had my little secret 5-second rule in my back pocket. I had a TEDx talk that had mistakenly gone viral online. And now I had people asking me if I would come and I would talk in breakout sessions at women's conferences. And I'm like, okay, that sounds fun. Now, keep in mind in my life, this is the moment when Chris has left the restaurant industry. He is bottomed out, not functioning, focused on getting sober. And I am working 2 jobs trying to keep things afloat. I mean, it is a really scrambling time in our life. And so I said yes to these things. And I'll never forget it. In 2013, I did 7 talks, I think it was, all for free. I had no idea that people got paid to do this. And I was doing it because I wanted to escape the pressure of my life. And if I'm being perfectly honest, as nervous as I was that about doing this, and I'd get a big neck rash and I'd turn bright red in my face, as nervous as I was, there was something about being asked to tell my story and inspire other people that really lifted me up and made me feel, I don't know, like it's sort of like how you fluff a pillow up when it's looking deflated. It just lifted my spirits a little bit to have the focus be on helping other people. And so it was like a lifeline. But I was still so nervous. When I tell you I was nervous, I mean, I was so nervous. I not only wore Spanx, I would put like a pad in the Spanx because I was sweating so much. I had all kinds of wardrobe fails because I would literally sweat like Niagara Falls. That's what I do. I have a hot flash as I get nervous. So I'll never forget it. It was the Pennsylvania Women's Conference. It was Hillary Clinton, I think, was the keynote speaker. And then there was this incredible woman who was the principal of Strawberry Hill Mansion, who I just love. And she spoke in the main room, 14,000 women there. And I was in this breakout session. And it was the largest room I had ever been in. I almost had a heart attack. There were like 1,000 seats set up. And I had never been in a room that size. So I give this talk, which was largely just a mimic of the TEDx talk that I did. And this woman comes up to me afterwards and she's like, "Oh my God, you were so great," which was really nice to hear. And she said, "Can I ask you a question? I was also a speaker this morning. I was in a breakout room on a panel and I just want to ask you a question, speaker to speaker." And I was like, "Of course." And she said, "Did you get your check yet?" And I said, "Check? Wait a minute, you got paid for this?" And she looked at me with horror and said, "Oh my God, I'm really sorry. I just assumed like you had a bigger, I just assumed that you got paid." I'm like, people get paid for this? Like normal people get paid for this? And I was so flabbergasted. It was one of those moments where you're just like, am I the stupidest fucking idiot on the planet? Does everybody else know this shit but me? And I was so dumbfounded that for 2 weeks, I was just like stunned at what an idiot I was. I didn't even think to ask anybody to pay me to do this, because I didn't think I was any good at it. So I made myself a promise. I said, "You know what? I have no idea what to charge. You don't have a book. You should probably write one of those too. But first you got to figure out how to keep the lights on in the house and keep the family afloat and keep paying the bills." And I thought, here's what I'm going to do. I am going to just, when the next person calls and says, "We'd like to book you to speak," I'm going to pause, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, take a breath. And then I'm going to say, "I think I'm available. What's your budget?" And then I'm going to wait. I'm going to listen to the number, and then I'm going to go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, pause. Normally I'm double. And pause and see what happens. Because I didn't even know what to price myself at. So 2 weeks later, the phone rings. And it's this guy in Dallas, Darren Paul. And he had been in the speaking business for like 20 years. And he says, blah, 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 heard da-da-da-da-da. And I got to thank his wife, Lori, because she's the one that saw my TEDx talk going viral on Facebook. And she said to her husband, "You got to book this woman for our sales conference for Jay Hilburn." And so Darren calls me. First phone call I received, no joke, when I've made myself this promise. And he asked if I'm available 5 months from now in Dallas in August to speak at the National Sales Conference for this company, Jay Hilburn. I said, "I think I'm available. What's your budget?" And he said, $10,000. I dropped the fucking phone. We had liens on our 10,000. I had no fucking idea, people. What the 10,000 fucking dollars? Are you fucking kidding me? I will literally, I'll strip for that. I mean, that's unbelievable. So I forgot the second part. I was like, okay, I'm in. Yes. Now, luckily I was so nervous. And, sometimes fear is a fantastic thing because it motivates you. I was so nervous because I felt so unworthy of that amount of money that I did something really smart, and fear motivated me to do this. I was so nervous that I would fall flat on my face because I believed I was not worthy of that kind of money because I had never made that kind of money. That I used half of the budget to pay a graphic designer to help me create a PowerPoint because I needed at least something that would look like that. And I practiced and I practiced and I prepared. And that's one of the big things that you got to take away. One of the best freaking tools for nerves is preparation. The more you prepare, what you're actually doing is working through your own resistance to this shit. You're creating muscle memory. You're rehearsing. Will you choke? Maybe, but not after I teach you the tools that I'm going to teach you today. But you will never get better or conquer your fear of doing this, public speaking, if you're unwilling to prepare. So part of the nerves might be that you're not even preparing enough. You're not rehearsing. You're not rehearsing in front of people. You're not taking the time to edit your mark. Like, it takes time, and rehearsal is so important. If you prepare, you're removing nerves. You're setting yourself up to win. And so think about preparing like you're just building this muscle. It doesn't take the nerves away or the fear away or the stakes away, but by God, it's going to help these tools work because you will have the preparation. There's this really famous quote that I love that I talk about all the time. It's by Charlie Bird Parker. I don't even know if this is a real story, but I love this quote. Apparently, Charlie Bird Parker, the famous jazz musician, was asked by a journalist who was writing a big article about him, how the hell do you do what you do with that horn? And you know what Charlie Bird Parker said? He said, well, first you got to learn your instrument. And that takes years, decades of practice. You got to study it. You got to rehearse. You got to do your scales. You got to practice over and over and over and over and over again until you learn that instrument. And then you forget all that shit they taught you and you just wail. And so preparation allows you to tap into your genius. Preparation is what allows you to improv, to freestyle, to be fully express the highest you, to channel, to like tap into something. And it's in there in you. That's why you feel this push-pull and this desire to show up more in your life. So I spent all this time preparing. And I showed up, and there are moments in your life that really matter. And this was one of them. I met this moment. I stepped on that stage with my neck rash and my rosy cheeks and my dry mouth, and I fucking destroyed it. Because I had prepared because I was afraid. Now, I also had the biggest wardrobe failure I have ever had on a stage. So I wore this dress because at the time I was a commentator for CNN, and I used to wear this dress all the time on CNN. And I thought, okay, if somebody's paying you that kind of money, you got to look like you're on TV. So I wore this like kind of power lady dress. You can already imagine it, right? It's got like sort of the V-neck and the pencil skirt. And it's hard to walk in. It looks good on television, but you're not moving and you're sitting in a chair. I had never looked at it with a light behind me. And at the end of the speech, I just fillet this thing. I walk off that stage. It was the first time I'd ever been projected on a jumbotron in an arena. And after the speech, this woman came up to me. She was darling. She's like, oh my God, I love the 5-second rule. Thank you so much for those. It was amazing. I'm like, oh my God. I'm going to pay my mortgage this month. This is great. And she said, you were so great. I have to tell you something. And I'm like, what? She said, don't ever wear that dress again. I said, why? She said, I don't even want to tell you this. I said, what? She said, I could not only see that you were wearing Spanx, but that you had a thong on underneath them. That dress is so see-through, and you could see it all on the Jumbotron. Okay. We went from winning to wanting to melt and crawl into a hole, but fuck it. You know, I honestly, when you fuck up, you know what the research shows? People like you more. And that shows in that comment. That, by the way, is called the pratfall effect, that your imperfections make you more likable, more trustworthy. It makes you as an expert be somebody that people lean toward. And you've had this experience, haven't you? Where you might have somebody that's got a PhD, that's a know-it-all, that's really snooty and talking down to you. You're kind of like, I don't want to learn from you. But when you got somebody that is, you know, on a stage or teaching you something, or just somebody you meet if there's something that humanizes them, it so builds trust. And that's an important thing to understand, because the idea here is not that you're going to get it perfect. It's that you're willing to try. So maybe that's why I destroyed it. I don't know. Everyone was rooting for me because you could see the Spanx and the thong underneath the dress. But that dress went in the freaking trash can at the hotel, never to see the light of day again, although I hope somebody pulled it out and used it. But I never looked back from that moment, because Darren, who booked me, had been in this business for 20 years. And he said, I got to tell you, you are top 3 of all time and the single best female speaker I have ever seen in my entire life. Who manages your business? And I said, you do. And he has run my speaking business ever since. And so along the way, it took me several years to truly get over my nerves. And I don't get nervous. I care deeply. I get super intentional about the stakes, because I really want to make a huge difference, and I want to destroy it on these stages and entertain and empower and inspire and all of it. So I do care about how I perform when I am stepping on a stage or I'm behind this mic. But I have come up with incredible ways to not only face my fear of public speaking, but to conquer it, and to use science and really amazing mental reframes to tame those nerves. And that's what I'm going to teach you today. Because you know what I want for you? I want your fullest expression. I want fear to stop holding you back. I want you to trust fall into your life. I want you to take that first step and climb the staircase to the things that you want in your life. And there are too many places where fear holds you back and keeps you silent and has you questioning yourself. And so that was me too. And I just chipped away at this fucker. And I am so glad that I did, because I just can't even imagine how much I would yearn for what I'm doing now without even realizing it. But the first step is admitting that there are fears that are holding you back. And so we're going to use public speaking, because it's the number one fear for everybody. Can you hear that? That right there is the Dallas Convention Center. 3,000 women in the audience. I am taking the stage today, and I am taking you to work with me.